It's always great to see a family gardening together, and right now we're going to be putting things together for winter color, and I'm joined by Alexandra McBrearty
That's right.
From Color Spot Nursery, where you work as a big garden wholesaler here, very famous in the nursery trade for growing lots of big colorful plants, and you've worked as a garden designer and obviously a garden enthusiast, so it's great to have you on Central Texas Gardener.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
Well, we're going to be talking about brightening up the winter landscape and mixing things up too. I think a lot of folks are used to using annuals in their landscape during the winter time, but you advocate mixing annuals with some of the bold texture, sometimes native plants.
Absolutely, like the agaves and the
yuccas and things like that.
Things like that. They all give a lot of color. They sit there all winter, and then you can surround them by perennials in the summer, and easy, low maintenance all the time.
Well, you, in addition to working with plants, you are something of an artist. I want to show some of the things that you've brought, because you have some beautifully decorated containers that you've done all the painting and ornamentation on, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a hobby.
So. And this is how you spend your evenings when
This is how I spend my evenings when I get home from work. I grab one of the pots, I paint it up, and bring home some of my goodies and put them in.
Well, we have beautiful pots to show, and also some really nicely mixed plantings to show as well, and give people an idea of what they can put in the ground during the wintertime. The first container that we're going to show and kind of highlight here, Alexandra, beautiful ornamentation, by the way, love that. And the beading is really cool as well.
Yeah, it catches the light really well, so when a light in the evening hits it or the sunlight hits it, it kind of glimmers.
Oh, that's cool. And in this particular planter, we have, I see a golden euonymus, beautiful yellow pansies, and some little purple Johnny jump-ups, violas.
Yeah, violas, and some heterohelix, the ivy, which just gives it a little bit of a spiller. So, but I love the purple and the yellow together. I think that's a great combination.
It's one of my favorite combinations in the garden.
Even though I have no yellow or purple in the pot, but somehow it seems to go. Yeah.
Well, this is, and again, don't be afraid if you're putting things in a container or creating beds of mixing evergreen plants with your annuals. It really makes things pop out. And
you know what else I love is putting a container like that in a bed, say a perennial bed, where you just have a few evergreens in it in the winter. Pop one of those in the middle of the border. It adds a splash of color. It doesn't just have to be right by the front door.
There you go. Perfect. Right next to it, we have another one of your creations, and I really am fond of the yucca family. And this is the yucca pendula, the soft yucca, and a couple different varieties of viola and pansy in there as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely, the same kind of thing, all over again.
Yeah, and you can see the really beautiful form of the yucca, and how just having a little bit of softness around it really kind of plays it off well. That's
actually the tropical yucca, so occasionally it can get a little bit nipped in the winter, but just a teeny bit, and just snip it off with a pair of scissors, good to go. Yeah.
Well, the next one, it looks like a Christmas basket to me.
Does it?
Cyclamen always looks like Christmas to me.
It does.
But this is a really wonderful combination. And here's another great color combo tip: silvers and reds.
Silver and red. It just looks like Santa Claus. So.
Well, beautiful container once again. This is really lovely. And inside the pot we have, I mentioned cyclamen. What else do we have in here?
You've got the dianthus and Dusty Miller. Good old-fashioned favorite. Well, in fact, they're all good old-fashioned favorites. Nothing fancy, just good garden plants.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about dianthus. I absolutely am crazy about the dianthus family, but I think that's just a perfect color combination. And again, very seasonal look. Something that I would put by the front door.
Yeah, it would look good.
Yeah.
If you've got a nice front door.
Front door, if you're having people over for the holidays, having a party, this is a perfect way to welcome your guests. And opposite that, you have done a similar kind of planting, and again, beautiful container.
Yeah.
And this, the centerpiece of this is an evergreen holly called Sky Pencil, right?
Yeah, and you know what's great for that also is because we are coming up to the holidays, is you could just get a little string of 10 lights, something like that. They cost about $1 at the dollar store. Wind them round, battery operated, tuck that in the pansies or the cyclamen, and almost like a Christmas tree in the middle of your pot.
That's great. That's great. And so again, a similar theme. We have some cyclamen, some pansies, sky
and the heuchera
pencil.
at the front gives a little splash of
right.
purpley
Heuchera.
red, which you can also match up with pansies. And so you've got the same kind of thread of color going through.
That's really a lot of fun to look at. Now, I want to mention that we talked about mixing in some of the hardy southwestern kinds of plants, and this is a plant we haven't really talked about these kinds of yuccas before. These are yuccas. They do have a sharp tip, but it's a softer foliage. It's not as stiff as you would expect, and this is called bright edge. I think this one.
Bright edge, yeah. Very popular. It flies off the shelves when we bring it in. It is a little sharp at the ends,
a little
but
bit.
It won't kill you if you fall on
No,
it. So it won't impale you.
No, not at all. And the color that you get along the this one has got the color along the perimeter, and there's another form that has a center stripe.
Yeah, they stripe different ways, a lot of them.
Right. And now I want folks to imagine this with lots of color around it, because I'm thinking that you can mix in things like the dianthus, and then want to come back to this plant family just a bit, because we all know about pansies for winter color, but I am really sold on the dianthus. These are tough plants.
Me too. You just pop them in and ignore them, and this, even though it's an annual variety, it's going to give you a good couple of years before you have to pull it out. The quickest way to kill it, probably to overwater it.
Exactly, and in fact, there's some varieties of this with the gray foliage. I mix with things like the yucca in my garden and never water during the summertime.
Just sit back and admire.
Yeah, you're right, and the color forms on these annuals are just amazing.
They are. They're almost edible. They're so delicious.
Really, really big on those. Now, we have a group of plants over here that are greens, largely, but colorful greens.
They are, and you can put those, the kales and the cabbages and the Swiss chard, if you want more of a regimented bedding, perhaps, you can go one after another with something more colorful in between. And of course, the kale and the cabbages, and they give you great spring flowers.
Sure.
If you leave them in long enough, they go to
seed, and they get those cones with the
and
flowers.
they
They're
look
very
great.
bizarre.
Yeah. So if you can leave them in long enough, they look great even in the spring.
And they go right through the wintertime, no problem whatsoever. I love all the plants in that family. Here's a plant that I have always admired, and I think the Camellia japonicas here in Austin may be a little tricky, but the Camellia sasanqua, which is another form, autumn blooming and winter blooming, are really great container specimens for us.
They are, and if you put them in a container, they're so much easier to give them their required soil.
Right.
So they're acid loving. You can buy a bag. It's not a huge deal to find it. And you can also feed them. You can find azalea and rhododendron and camellia food. So.
Very easy to take care of. I just give them a little liquid seaweed iron and then regular fertilizer.
Yeah.
And they do terrific. This is a variety called Bonanza. This has got a kind of a shrubby form. Some of them are weeping almost, and some are very upright, like the Yuletide, which is a great plant.
Yes, it
One of
is.
my favorite in my garden right now, actually. About to go to town. It's I think it's going to have 500 blooms on it. It's going to be great.
I wouldn't doubt it.
You brought a group of plants for the shade as well, and this is a nice little grouping of different textures and different colors to lighten up shady spots.
That's right. The Aztec grass, you can't go wrong with. It really doesn't care what you do. You stick it in the ground and it just sits there looking colorful and variegated. The cyclamen, which you call cyclamen, again, gorgeous, and I've actually been able to keep them in the shade for a couple of years. Now that doesn't happen often, but occasionally, occasionally you can.
Right.
And then next to that, I think we've got the salsify, commonly known as the oyster plant, which is used a lot in...
really colorful, I like that.
Yeah, I know. It looks like a wandering Jew. It looks like it would be...
Yeah, it's in the same plant family, right?
It looks like it would be tender, but it's hardy down to 20 degrees.
That's great.
So again, the foliage might get a little nipped if we drop really low for quite a long time, but that doesn't happen that much.
Not too much.
So risk it for a Swiss kit.
Yeah, well, great grouping. And one thing about the Aztec grass too, I will say, is that in the summertime, it really cools the landscape down to that variegated form.
When we get all hot and heavy.
Well, this is lots of great ideas here, lots of great winter color, and we really do appreciate you coming on board and sharing your talents and your color vision with us. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's been a great pleasure, and we'll look forward to seeing more of all the great stuff you have from Color Spot in the nurseries over time.
I'll bring it in.
Coming up next, it's Skip.